Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to go over another pretty quick game in the Bishop's opening that highlights another mistake that some black players make early on. You'll also notice here I included the eval bar here in the left of the screen for this game. It's something I might be doing every so often, not in every game, but in some of them it might be useful. So here it is for now. And for those of you who don't know what this is it's basically a quick way of seeing who's winning the game. So it starts out even here, and you'll see 0.0. There's also a number. And this is going to go up and down as moves are made on either side. So if the bar goes all the way up, that means that white's winning. Vice versa, if it goes down, and you'll see mostly black here, that means that black is winning. Um, and you'll see how that moves over the course of the game. This number is also going to change. So if white is winning, let's say white is +1, that means all things considered, white is basically up a pawn in the position. But if on the other side, if you see like -5 in the bottom left here, that means that black is up by basically a full rook of material. So that's how that goes. We'll see how this goes in this game. So bishop's opening starts with e4, bishop c4. My opponent plays knight f6, which is the correct move here, and I went ahead and played d4 like I've been going over in some other videos. So black's best move here is always to take the pawn on d4. But sometimes your opponent's not going to do that. And I've seen that. But this move I haven't seen, which is d5. I haven't seen this move yet. This is the first time. It seems pretty logical. You're attacking the bishop here. The knight's defending the square, so is the queen. It doesn't quite work out. It has some issues with it. And we'll get into that. We'll see what happens, what I do here. I checked the database on chess.com, and there are a couple of professional games where d5 was played. I think 2 or 3, but it's very rare. So just wanted to throw that in there too. So let's see what I did. I capture the pawn on e5. I'm threatening the knight, and of course my opponent took my bishop. But you'll notice on that pawn capture, these queens are now staring at each other. And since white has the first move here, I went ahead and traded the queens. And what that does is it forces black to capture with the king. And after that, I went and took the knight on f6. So let's quickly summarize the position here. Neither side has any developed pieces, but there are some differences in the position. We can see that the eval bar says +1.3 right now. So it's not the end of the world for black, but it is a position that you don't want to find yourself in if you can avoid it. So the differences in the position. Number one, black's king is in the middle of the board and now can no longer castle because he had to take back that queen, whereas white can castle. And the other thing is, let's say black plays the best move, which is recapturing the pawn on f6. You'll notice that black has 2 sets of doubled pawns, and these pawns here on the f file and the h file, they're isolated pawns. So this pawn structure is kind of screwed up for black. Compare that to white. White has a very nice pawn structure. You can push this at some point if you want, or you can castle, but you've got good pawn chains going here. So that's a pretty big difference. And I would argue in a rapid game that +1.5 here isn't even giving it justice because of the king's position, the king's safety. A counter argument to that would be the queens are off the board, and generally it's a little bit more acceptable to have kings in the middle when the queens are not there to threaten them. So that's another thing to think about. But it's not overall not great for black. So let's see how black played this out. Black did not play the best move, which is recapturing the pawn here. Instead, he plays knight to c6, which allows me to play bishop to g5, developing the piece. But also this, there's a very direct threat here in a couple ways. So if black just ignores this, of course, I can take the pawn on g7 with check, and the game is going to be over because I'm going to take the rook here, get a queen. Obviously, not good for black. The other thing is, by doing this, black also can't recapture the pawn now, because if he does, we're taking and we're winning the rook as well. So black plays the correct move here, and he moves his king over to e8, getting out of the way of this x-ray. And now I develop my knight to d2. So I was seeing a couple of variations where, let's say I would take this pawn. Black's going to have a really nice diagonal for their bishop here. And if I develop my knight this way, well, that could screw up my pawn structure if he chooses to take that, which I wanted to avoid. Also, I wanted to kind of attack this pawn here. The best move actually was playing knight to c3. You'll see how this dropped the eval bar a little bit. The reason why knight c3 is so good is because I'm threatening to jump up to d5. And d5 is pinning these, not pinning, threatening this pawn here on c7 with a fork. And that's one thing, and the other thing is it's also defending the f6 square. So knight c3 is the best move, but this is okay. And black plays bishop to e6, defending that pawn. And I just went ahead and castled queenside here. There's a nice open file, but this was also a little bit of a mistake, and it was kind of black's last chance to kind of, you know, threaten me in this game, or I wouldn't say that, but make this a great game considering or expecting me to play well. But, and the reason why this isn't so great is because black can push this pawn here on c3, which is pretty annoying. I kind of have to take this pawn. And when I do, black can then play rook to g8 here. And what that's going to do is it's going to prepare him to actually take this pawn, attack my bishop, and also opens up this rook on this file here where this pawn is also undefended. So there's a couple moves that black could have made to get himself back into the game. This was kind of the last chance that he had. And unfortunately for him, he played rook to d8. And again, you'll notice a bar jump up here. So this is the only puzzle in the video. I suggest you guys, if you would like to pause the video, think about the best move for white here. Okay, and I'll go over it in a couple seconds. Okay, so the move here that I played was capturing on g7 with the pawn. The reason this is, you know, such a good move is because it's opening up a double attack. So I win this pawn, and we've got, first of all, this bishop attacking this rook that just moved over here onto the d file, and this pawn is also attacking both these pieces. And you obviously, as black, have to deal with this pawn. So after he recaptures the pawn, I trade the bishop for the rook, and now I am in a great position. And I played c3 because, again, this bishop here has a really nice diagonal, and I don't want to allow this pawn to go to c3. If he does, we're going to run into problems, because this bishop is defending it. He can take this guy. If I take, then this bishop's going to come in, and he's going to be very obnoxious. So I played c3. I also could have played knight to e2, developing this knight and also defending the square, but this was okay. And now black played, I think, probably the most interesting move of the game, or a very interesting move, which is f5. The computer doesn't like it, the engine doesn't like it, but what he's really doing is he's encouraging me to take this pawn and then win this pawn here on c4, because the bishop is giving up the defense there of that pawn. But what this accomplishes for black is two really powerful bishops. And after I take the pawn on c4, black plays bishop to h6 check, and now you can see the power of these bishops. But before I took this pawn, I calculated and made sure that I could always go back and block this check. So I wouldn't have to block, let's say, with the rook or something like that and lose the rook. I made sure that I could block it. And most importantly, whenever you're gonna be using a piece to block a check, you want to make sure that your opponent can't quickly gang up pressure on that piece with their other pieces. So there's no good way for black to gang up on this piece. Obviously, the bishop can't do it. The knight is going to take a lot of moves to attack that rook, that knight, and the king is also going to have to move out of the way to allow the rook to do that. So that's something that you always have to keep in mind when you do something like this. You want to make sure that you can't get ganged up, because if you do, then you could end up losing the piece. Okay. So now black develops the knight there, and I finally developed this knight to f3, and now black is doing what I just mentioned before, which is trying to get his rook involved on this piece which is pinned, which is always generally a good idea. But before he can do that, I jump my knight over to d4, and this is kind of trying to relieve the tension, considering I'm up material, and it's just double attacking, so he kind of has to do something about this. So he goes ahead and takes that knight. We trade, and now I get my rook into the game, possibly putting on some pressure. Obviously, these squares are covered right now, but the rook has some opportunities here. It also gives me another little escape square for my king in case I need it. And now black piles on the pressure there, but at this point, I can simply just move my king to d2. Now this knight's got 2 defenders, and all I have to do basically is get this rook into the game, and this should be a relatively straightforward victory at that point for me, considering I have both rooks here. Now black plays c5, and all I did was just move my rook up, kind of double attacking these two. And black played king to f6 and immediately resigned the game after that. You can see how, I don't even know if you can notice on the actual bar, but you can see that here it's +5. And the king moves here to defend this, but he's not actually defending it. He's just hanging a piece, and it went up to 10. So black resigned here, makes sense. I really wanted to show you the opening. It was pretty obvious also that there were some other mistakes black made here, and there was a couple moves that I made early on, knight d2 and castling, that could have allowed him to get back into the game, but I definitely had a lot of momentum because of the opening here of him not taking this. So remember, if white plays d4 here, if you're black, you want to take that pawn on d4. All right, I'll see you next time.